Hey guys, this is Sparkblood Soldier here, and this is my new What If. What if Deku was Tojo Kirumi? A goal I must promise, and I hope you like this video and hope you subscribe. Greetings, I am Sumi Midoriya, and let me tell you about this world. There are those that have powers that are considered quirks, and those that don't have no quirks. They are quirkless. I have no quirk. I am quirkless, but it does not mind me. But it is 80% of the world has a quirk, and 20% have not a quirk. So it's somewhat rare for a quirkless person in this place. There are those that hold the light, that are called heroes, that face justice and save people. And on the dark side, we have villains that do unspeakable things and fight the light. This is My Hero Academia, and it is a wonderful time meeting you. But there are few that are exceptions. I am the ultimate maid, and I don't brag about that. I just take the job serious. And this is my story on My Hero Academia. And Sumi then cuts to the role to helping the orphanage on it and taking care of the kids in the orphanage. And Sumi was happy to see them and happy to take care of them. And the kids were happy to have Sumi helping them and being caretaker. And Sumi then says, huh? Looking at her watch, ringing. And Sumi says, alright, I have to go, but I'll be back. And all the orphanage kids were wondering, Miss Sumi, where are you going? And Sumi says, I have to partake in a little matter that is fine with you. And all the kids were just worried that Sumi won't come back. But Sumi then says, don't worry, like I promised, a maid always take her job serious. And all the children in the orphanage says, Pinky promise? And Sumi then says, yes, Pinky promise. And giving her pinky out and shaking it with all the young orphanage student kids. And Sumi says, alright, I have to go. And all the orphanage student kids were waving their hands at Sumi and saying, see ya soon. And Sumi then gets dressed in her student uniform. It says, alright, it's time to work in the school. And Sumi goes to Mustafa Private Middle School. And Sumi was doing her studying and doing some work that the teachers give to her. Handling almost everything that the students have to do as well. Almost taking it all with determination. Almost doing it by herself as well. All the students were admiring her, almost considering her to be the ultimate maid. And Sumi then somewhat agrees but disagrees at the same time. She has weaknesses on that, and nobody's perfect. And helping others with their troubles or what they need, we go to a certain black-haired boy named Kirishima. Kirishima was trying to stop those two boys that were picking on a porcupine quirk user who was gonna try to give him his money. And then they kind of brushed him off. And his two friends told him that, Kirishima, are you sure you're gonna forget it, Kirishima? And Kirishima says, what, Cheek? And his friend says, why do you stick your neck out like that? And Kirishima says, because a real hero is supposed to be manly, doesn't care about what type of quirk it is. And the friends point at those three guys that were with Mina and seeing her do some fun activities with them and trying it with not a lethal way or a fighting. But when they were seeing that Sumi comes out and gives them their drinks. And Kirishima says, seriously? They became friends that quickly? And Mina then smiles at Sumi for doing her request. And Sumi says this, oh, it's nothing special. You gave me the request and I did it. And Mina then says this, you're like a motherly figure, you know? And Sumi says, yes, I get that a lot. And Mina says, you're like a no. Sumi then shuts her down on that. And Mina says, whoa, no hesitation. And Sumi then says this, I know you are going to say mom. And Mina says, huh? What do you mean? Isn't that? Sumi then says this, it's not because of that. It's how you depict it. Think of a young woman being called that. And then Mina, then understands where she's coming from. And Sumi says this, if a young woman like any of us would be called that, it's a disrespectful term. And it only works on if it's a middle age or somewhere in their 30s or 40s, making it not very popular. So Mina then says this, alright, sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. And Sumi then says, it's okay, I heard way worse than this. And Sumi and Mina were getting really along with communication. And Kirishima sees how Sumi kind of puts up a lot than she gets. Then you see Sumi, when they were going out, doing tennis and nailing it. Then doing basketball, swimming, of course. And mix of karate and judo and taekwondo. And being on a athletics course. And Kirishima says, she's the manliest of all. And then Kirishima then still has that positiveness on. But then he sees Gigantomachia stopping two girls and asking them a question.
Where is the hero agency? Tell me where it is.
And he breaks a building with his hands, threatening them. And the girls were scared. And Kirishima then stood still, frozen fear, trying to help, but fear succumbed him. But Mina then intervenes and tells Gigantomachia the wrong way. Gigantomachia then questions and was wondering, is it really the right way? And Mina is getting a little frightened. But when she was in a panic that she might not fool him, Sumi then intervenes and says, yes, that is the way. And giving a smile on to sell where it is, the wrong way of the hero and agency. And Gigantomachia says, are you really sure? And Sumi then says, a maid doesn't lie. And Gigantomachia then goes off and without any major climate incident. And Mina and her friends were crying and were so scared that it wasn't funny. And Mina then says, thanks, Sumi, you saved my life. And Sumi then and looks with serious but also shaking in her hands and says, it's no problem. And Mina says, you're scared, looking at Sumi. And Sumi says, I never faced a big person like him before, so it's the first time to deal with. Sumi then smiles and says, I have to go. And Mina says, okay. And Kirishima then goes into a little depression on not helping and being a coward. But when he goes home, Sumi then looks where he was And then Sumi then walks to him and says, Master Kirishima. And Kirishima says, Master? Huh? And looks and says, Oh, Zumi. And Sumi says, just call me Sumi Midoriya. I am here to help you. And Kirishima says, Oh, Zumi, I didn't want... And Sumi says, you look like it. I just want to help. And Kirishima then says, okay. And they walk together and sees a little height difference between them. And Kirishima says, oh, I didn't realize it, but you're about somewhere to 6. And Sumi says, no, I'm more in 5'9". And Kirishima says, well, that's taller than me. And Sumi then says, anything else you want to say? With a little look of curious. Kirishima then says, what do you want? And Sumi says this, I've seen you being worried about Mina and those 2 girls. And Kirishima says, you notice? And Sumi says this, I would have helped them anytime. It's a maid after all. But I also saw you being afraid. And Kirishima says, man, I didn't want that to happen. And Sumi then says this, oh, it's normal to be afraid. And Kirishima says, but Crimson Riot is manly as hell. So I need to be just as manly to become a hero, to help others. And Sumi then chuckles a bit. And Kirishima says, what? What's so funny? And Sumi then says, oh, it's nothing too special. You're so cheerful and positive. I admire that. And Kirishima says, oh, thanks. And Sumi then also says this, but it ain't wrong to be afraid of something, you know? And Kirishima says, oh, what do you mean by that? And Sumi then says, not everything looks as black and white. There's sometimes a gray, but you must figure that one out for yourself. And Kirishima says, I bet Crimson Riot was afraid as well sometime in his past. And Kirishima says, huh? What do you mean? And Sumi then says this, not everyone is brave. Sometimes they have one stutter, and that would show how they're afraid of. It's not too hard to figure out on some things like that. And Kirishima says, oh, but I also want to ask you a question. And Sumi says, go right ahead. Answer any question. Why do you take requests from people? They know that they can do it themselves, or you can't help. They don't want your help. And Sumi then says this in a polite but also serious tone. That is true, but I may be worthless, but I can help in many ways. As a maid should. I always help anyone at any cost. And Kirishima says, what about if they... And Sumi then says, no, I don't answer those ones. Those hurry suggestions don't in line with me. And Kirishima says, and Sumi then looks at that sigh and says, so, is there anybody you have a crush on? And Kirishima says, no. And Sumi says, alright, I won't force you. And Kirishima then looks at her. Did she? And Sumi says, alright, we're at home. You're home. And Kirishima says, thanks, Sumi. Sorry for taking your time. And Sumi says, it's no problem. I had a specific work to do. And Kirishima went back into his house and looks at Crimson Riot and sees that he's also not immune to his fears as well. And Kirishima then says, well, I'll be much stronger to help others. And Sumi then goes to the orphanage to help the children. And all the children were happy to see Sumi back. and Sumi was in. Then she forgot something. Oh, I need to get some meals to prep. I'll go to the store. And all the kids were saying, alright. Sumi went to the shortcut and see it being very, very desolate. And Sumi said, sometimes places don't change much. And when she thinks about that, she then heard a little gurgle from the sewer outlet. And Sumi then dodged with her amazing speed and says, who's there? And then the sludge villain comes out and says, my, you're pretty perceptive, you know. And Sumi then looks at him. Sludge. You must be the sludge villain I heard. And the sludge villain says, well, ain't that not surprising? I was hoping a quirk user, but I'll use your body for this. And Sumi then looks at him with a very perceptive stare, and the sludge villain says, well, your body is gonna be mine! And Sumi then dodges that with no hesitation and says, your speed is a little lacking. And the sludge villain says, well, let's see if you... Oh! Getting hit by a pole in the eye, a wooden one. And then the sludge villain says, where did you even get that, bitch? And Sumi then says, I found it on the way, on the side streets. I heard my little friends told me about a little person that was hearing gurgles. So I advised them to keep away from there. And Sludge Villain then thinks, you're the person that told those little brats they couldn't get near here? And Sumi then says, yes, I figured it was a villain, but I didn't know what type. And the Sludge Villain says, that wooden pole wouldn't even hurt me, you dumb... Sumi then pokes him with that pole. Yes, but it also would commend your few weaknesses that I figured out. And the Sludge Villain says, my nose! Getting a little red. And the Sludge Villain getting angry at that. Sumi then says this, you're too reliant on your whole body being a sludge. So I figured if I could use the pole to hit your eyes, it would make it hard to see me. And the Sludge Villain says, no, it's gonna piss me off. You're gonna die. Sumi then dodged out of the way from the Sludge Villain. And the Sludge Villain's tendrils come to get Sumi. And Sumi then puts a long distance against the Sludge Villain's tendrils. And Sumi then remarks, I was wrong about that. I need to keep distance. But when she thinks about that, the Sludge Villain then says, get ya! Having grabbed the pole. And Sumi then thinks, no. And Sumi trying to pull it back, but the Sludge Villain says, got you now, pesky brat! But when he says that, a certain person says, don't worry, because I am here! And then Sludge Villain says, no, it's... And All Might says, Unite Detroit Smash! And knocking out the Sludge Villain. And All Might says, good day, young civilian! How was your day? Are you hurt anywhere? And Sumi then bows and says, no, thank you on that. And then All Might looks closer. Ah, you're Sumi Midoriya, the ultimate maid. Am I wrong? And Sumi then says, no, you're not wrong. And All Might says, I heard a lot about you. You saved a child from a criminal organization. Impressive. And you also changed the head of crime to be a reformed butler. And Sumi then says, it's no problem. And All Might says, no problem. You have impressive tactics and impressive athletics abilities. I'm amazed. And Sumi says, it's just a job, nothing too special. And All Might then says, I gotta get this villain to jail, putting the sludge villain in the Coca-Cola bottle, and says, "We'll talk some other time." And Sumi says, "Okay, Master All Might." And All Might then goes and takes the sludge villain to prison, and Sumi gets the stuff to make the orphanage for the meals for the children. Then the next day, Sumi was talking to All Might, and All Might shows how he was injured, and Sumi was very unsettled but worried on that. All Might explains that he wants to have a successor to become the holder of One for All, and Sumi was the ideal choice because Mirio was hesitant on saving people, and Sumi has a record on helping people even if they were a criminal organization member or a leader, and reformed them, making it a very easy choice to figure it out. And Sumi then says, "Doesn't that also carry the weight as well?" And All Might says, "Yes, you also have to carry the weight on people's hopes on your shoulder." And then Sumi then says, "How do it?" And All Might says, Sumi then looks with a clear, serious look. "I'll help you with One for All. I'll help everyone, even if it needs to be hero, or I have to put my maid duty at hold for a bit." And All Might smiles and says, "Alright, let's train." And Sumi, as Kirumi, is probably a match made in heaven, because Kirumi has been known to be a very athletic girl, even to anime and game standards. She is literally the definition of a protagonist level. Like, I'm not kidding, most of the fan base are considering her much more of a protagonist than all the other characters combined. Like Danganronpa, Danganronpa 2, and Danganronpa 3. And I felt like she could have been the Danganronpa 3 main protagonist. Let's be honest, the characters from Danganronpa aren't really, how can I say, mostly being dweebs and losers. I would have honestly chosen her over Shoichi because, well, Kirumi is the definition of what a simple look and with godlike feats is with her. I'm not kidding. Go check out all the Danganronpa high school thing, because that was showing that she could actually be much better protagonist level than any other character. And then Sumi was training with All Might for 3 months, and Sumi then says, "That was a hard work." And All Might says, "Great job, young Midoriya. You are impressive hard worker." And Sumi says, "It's no problem, All Might." And All Might then smiles and says, "Now you're going to UA." And then that's where I'm ending this video. I hope you like this video and hope you subscribe. See you next time.